Okay. Good evening. Thank you very much to each one of you for making time to join this Gita Wisdom session. Today we will be covering chapter 4, which is titled Transcendental Knowledge. Gnana Karma Sannyasa Yoga. That's the Sanskrit name. We will do this chapter in two parts. Part 1, where we cover verse 1 to verse 24. And in the next class, we will do part 2, verse 25 to verse 42. Let's start the session by chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare.
Let's go to the first verse. First, before we start, let's take an overview of how this chapter looks like. So verses 4.1 to 4.10, Krishna establishes dharma. Why? He says dharma can protect you from kama, lust, and helps in liberation. Krishna explains the parampara and divinity of his own appearance. That's the transcendental knowledge. That's why this chapter is called Transcendental Knowledge. The second part of this chapter is between 4.11 to 4.15, where Krishna says dharma can lead to many paths, but Krishna is the goal and creator of all paths. Let's see how Krishna tells this to Arjuna. The third part is from 16th to 24th verse, Karma Yoga, where Krishna says Karma Yoga as dharma. Make Karma Yoga your dharma. That is what Krishna is recommending to Arjuna. Then we have part 4 and part 5, which we will cover in the next class. Now, before we jump into fourth chapter, a quick summary of chapter 3 would be useful so that we can connect ourselves to chapter 4 smoothly, seamlessly. So chapter 3 is, the acronym for chapter 3 is Tyaga. Sorry, 3, where T stands for Tyaga. Tyaga is renunciation. R is understanding yoga ladder. E is exemplary. And the last E is enemy of the soul. 3, that's how we remember chapter 3. Tyaga. Krishna covers this from verse 1 to 9, which is renunciation. He says, Arjuna, please give up mentality of enjoyment. And premature Tyaga is also discouraged. Arjuna asks a question to Krishna. Action or renunciation? Which is better? Which one do you recommend for me to choose? Krishna says, there are two types of people. Gnana yogis who renounce work and karma yogis do prescribed work. And as Krishna, I am advising you, Arjuna, you're a Kshatriya, you should do karma yoga. R, rungs on the yoga ladder. So this is verse 10 to 16, where Krishna talks about renunciation, Gnana yoga, and tells clearly that it is difficult, not for all to achieve. So what's the next best option? Prescribed action with detachment. That is Nishkama Karma. One should forgo from Karma Kanda to Karma Yoga. That's the yoga ladder. 3.10, he says, Yajna, do Yajna. Yajna gives you freedom from bondage. He defines Yajna as Istakama Duk, fulfills all desires. 3.16, if you don't follow the cycle of sacrifice, then you lead a life full of sin. Exemplary. This is the verses 17 to 35, where he talks about Mayi Sarvani Karmani, do your duty depending on me. Offer everything of your karma to me as fruits. E, enemy of the soul. This is an eye-opener for all of us. Which is the enemy of every living entity, Jiva, in this world? That is lust. And what does lust lead to? Degradation. Interestingly, in the whole last section of the chapter, Krishna tells us, where does lust reside? All of us believe that lust resides something else, somewhere else. But the sad reality is, or the shocking reality is, lust resides within us. It's in senses, the 5 senses that we have. It's in the mind, it's in the intelligence. And if you can overcome lust, that's the main obstacle on Karma Yoga, path for liberation. So this is a brief summary of chapter 3, titled Karma Yoga. Now we go to chapter 4, Transcendental Knowledge. What is the connection between chapter 3 and chapter 4? In the previous chapter, Krishna described how lust causes bondage. And he says how we have to curb the lust by deliberate spiritual intelligence. That was the last section of the last chapter. Now, in this chapter, Krishna is telling Arjuna about transcendental knowledge. What is transcendental knowledge? It's the knowledge to understand who is Krishna, what are his leelas when he appears in this world as an avatari, and just knowing about Krishna can take us away from bondage and also protects us from bondage of lust. It's such a simple, straightforward message. Know about me, and that's enough for you to come to me. Go to my abode, Golok Vrindavan. In 3.30, we just recited that verse, Mayi Sarvani Karmani. So Krishna is telling Arjuna to perform the highest level of Karma Yoga, you must surrender all the works to me. Now, the natural outflow question of this would be, who is Krishna? Why is Krishna asking Arjuna to surrender unto him? Now, that is the transcendental knowledge. And the power of knowing this knowledge is you can achieve mukti. And there are many verses which tells Arjuna clearly, just understand who I am, what I do, why I appear in this world, and that knowledge is enough to give you mukti. Let's look at the first verse. Very interesting verse. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Imam Vivasvate Yogam Proktavan Aham Avyayam Vivaswan Manave Praha Manur Ikshvakave Abravet. What is Krishna telling Arjuna? He says, I instructed this science of yoga to the sun god. And the name of sun god is Vivaswan. Vivaswan in turn instructed it to Manu, the father of mankind. And Manu in turn instructed it to Ikshvaku. Now, when you see this, why is Krishna telling this to Arjuna? Prabhupada in the verse describes that we can understand the history of Bhagavad Gita in this verse. It traces its history from a remote time when Lord Krishna delivered it to the royal order of all planets, beginning from the sun planet. Why sun? Because sun is the king of all planets. And the sun god Vivaswan rules the world, rules the universe, and controls all other planets by supplying heat and light. So Vivaswan was the first disciple to understand the science of Bhagavad Gita. Why is Krishna telling the parampara to Arjuna? Because Krishna wants to highlight that this knowledge is not something new. That he is telling Arjuna. This is time-tested, time immemorial. From those times, this knowledge has existed. And he has also told Arjuna the lineage of how the Gita has been flowing down from one generation to the other. Now, why is he emphasizing that this knowledge was told to the kings? Because the kings are the rulers and they protect the citizens by providing able rule. We have all heard of Ramarajya. If anyone wants to have the best ruled kingdom to compare, it is with Ramarajya. So, and what is Ramarajya? That is a rule based on dharma. So if the rajas, the kings, the emperors understand the science of Gita, then they will be able to protect the citizens from material bondage to lust. That's the purpose why the kings were made privy to this knowledge. Now, the question is, can anyone guess how old is Gita? Now, Gita is just not a book of knowledge, philosophy, life manual. It has some phenomenal scientific details. In fact, I won't be able to spend so much time to do justice to the description of time that Krishna has told Arjuna in this verse. However, I will give you one or two data points which will kindle your interest. And if you feel that, yes, we would like to know this in more detail, maybe we will have one class for half an hour or so where we just describe what is the description of time that Krishna tells Arjuna. Now, let's try to guess, when did Krishna give this knowledge to Vivaswan, the sun god? Any guesses? I'm sure none of us will ever be able to come close to the time horizon. Krishna spoke this the first time 120,400,000 years ago. Now, when I tell this number, it will take you a few seconds to digest it. First, it should register, and then you should digest. This is the first data point. Now, there is a detailed science as to how we have arrived at 120,400,000 years ago. But that, as I said, that will be subject to another class. Today, it takes away too much of time. The second data point is Manu, who is the father of mankind, spoke this to Ikshvaku 2,005,000 years ago. This is the second data point. And the third data point is Krishna spoke this to Arjuna 5,000 years ago, approximately. So that shows you the vast time horizon that this universe is. It also talks about what is the length of one Brahma's day, what is the length of this universe. So this universe lasts for 100 years of Brahma. So that is, if I remember it correctly, 340 trillion, 40 billion years. That's when this universe gets destroyed. That's when Brahma gives up his body. So this is phenomenal science. As I said, let's all interact separately to find time to go through this on a separate session. With this, let's come to the second verse. Evam parampara praptam imam rajrasayo viduhu sa kalena iha mahata yoganasta parantapa. Parantapa is the name of Arjuna. You will see Krishna calling him by different names throughout the chapter. What's the essence of this verse? Time makes the imperishable inaccessible. So what is imperishable? That's the knowledge. What is lost due to time is the disciplic succession is broken. That's the reason why the knowledge has become inaccessible. The knowledge is always there. It is eternal. It's just the factor of time which is playing a part. What is the translation? This supreme science was thus received through the chain of disciplic succession, and the saintly kings understood it in this way. But in course of time, the succession was broken, and therefore the science, as it appears to be, is lost. What's the explanation? So the key message coming through is this knowledge is passed on from generation to generation. So parampara is key. Evam parampara praptam. So the message of Gita is targeted at the kings because they are the rulers and the saints. The rulers, the rajas, are external. They're rulers from the external perspective. And the saints, the rishis, they control the inner world. They try to guide us to channel our consciousness towards spirituality. So he says, Imam Rajrasayo Viduhu. That is, if you have an able ruler and a saint together, he becomes Rajrishi. So this knowledge is passed on to the saintly kings and royal sages like Nimi, Sagara, so many people in this long disciplic succession chain. What is Gita specially meant for? It is meant for kings, it is meant for sages, because they have a sway over large parts of the population. What they say, citizens listen. And that's the reason why Gita is always spoken to a Rajrishi. And it is never meant for the demonic persons. And what does he say here? Kalena iha mahata nasta. The time makes the imperishable inaccessible. And what is imperishable? The knowledge of Gita. And why it is inaccessible? Because the disciplic section is broken. So time plays a part in making this knowledge inaccessible. So now he is trying to bring back that parampara by giving this knowledge to Arjuna. Let's look at verse 3. Sa evayam mayate adya yoga prokta puratanaha bhakto asime sakacheti rahasyam hi itad uttamam. I have underlined the word Uttamam. It has a big reference meaning in this. Because you are my devotee, Bhakto, and friend, Saka. Bhakto si me Saka cheti. Translation. That very ancient science of the relationship with the Supreme is told today by me to you, because you are my devotee as well as my friend, and can therefore understand the transcendental mystery of the science. So what is Krishna saying? He's saying, why did he choose Arjuna to share this knowledge? And what happens after Arjuna gets this knowledge? Rahasyam hi etad uttamam. Tama is darkness. Uttama is out of darkness. So from darkness, he is led on the path of light, of knowledge. That's the power of Gita's knowledge. So Lord is giving the reason, and reason for choosing Arjuna is two. He is a friend and Saka. And I mentioned this earlier as well. Gita is always spoken to deities, to devotees, and not to demonic persons. So Arjuna was pure devotee, and that's why Krishna chose him. And Srila Prabhupada in the purport says that if all of us or any of us wants to receive this knowledge, understand it as it is, then we should be in the position of Arjuna. We should be surrendered and we should be engaged in devotional service to the Lord. It is said, when the finite living entity, that is Atma, Jiva, offers himself to the infinite Lord through bhakti, then the infinite Lord reveals himself by his kind will. That's the essence of this verse. Next verse. Very interesting question from Arjuna. And that's what makes Gita so interesting. Arjuna says, Aparam bhavato janma, param janma vivaswataha, katam eta dvijaniyam, tvam madau proktavan iti. Look at the question. What is the question? He says, Arjuna said, the sun god Vivaswan is senior to you by birth. How am I to understand that in the beginning you instructed the science to him? A natural question. Krishna is not as old as one thinks him to be if he had to have given this knowledge to Vivaswan, which we saw was millions and millions of years ago. So for Arjuna, it is impossible to believe. He says, your birth is aparam, recent, and Vivaswan's birth is param, very old, ancient. How can I understand that you spoke to Vivaswan? Don't you think it's a valid question? Krishna certainly thinks so. Now, it's like a child telling that I taught Gita to my grandfather. Can anyone believe it? No one. So that's the kind of question that Arjuna is having when Krishna tells him about the parampara. Now, one is you look at the question, and another is to understand the essence of the question. The essence of the question is Arjuna wants the Lord to speak about himself from his own mouth in his own words. Because once the Lord describes, then that becomes transcendental knowledge. Nobody can say, no, this is an interpretation. So that is the inner meaning of why Arjuna wanted Krishna to explain how he had explained this to Vivaswan. Let's look at verse 5, which is going to be the answer from Krishna. Shri Bhagavan Vacha, Bahuni me vyatitani, Janmani tavacha Arjuna, Tani aham veda sarvani, na tvam veta parantapa. Another name of Arjuna, Parantapa. Krishna now tells Arjuna, my birth and death are not like yours. So this is the starting of transcendental knowledge. So one should read this carefully. What is Krishna trying to explain? Translation. The personality of Godhead said, many, many births, both you and I have passed. I can remember all of them, but you cannot, O subduer of the enemy. That is Parantapa. What is Lord saying is, Lord doesn't forget anything, whereas we forget most of the things, most of the times, because our memories get buried in the mind and we forget them instantly. It's like, it's not very difficult to understand this, and this example will make it very clear. You let us take a computer. I'm not talking about the mind or intelligence. I'm talking about a mundane thing like computer. And in the computer, so many times we forget to retrieve a file because we have forgotten the location, we have forgotten the name of the file, and we really don't know where we saved it and when we saved it. So this is how our mind operates. Why do we forget? Because we have undergone birth and death experiences many, many times in the past. And our experiences, both birth and death, are dramatic. And Krishna in Gita himself says that I have also given you the power of forgetfulness. Unless we forget the painful things in life, we will not be able to move forward. So that's another requirement for us to live in this world. That's the reason why we forget. Now, the whole process of human mind is meant to be fallible. It is not infallible like the Lord. So if I were to ask you what you did last Sunday at 5 o'clock, I'm sure most of you, including me, will struggle to remember what we did. Can I request you, all of you, to go on mute so that we will have no disturbance? Thank you. So in Brahma Samhita, Brahma in his prayers has described the incarnations of the Lord. He says, Advaitam, Achyutam, Anadim, Anantarupam, Adyam, Purana Purusham, Navayauvanam Cha, Vedeshu Durlabam, Adurlabam Atma Bhaktau, Govindam Adi Purusham, Tam Aham Bhajami. Can I mute all? Santosh, do you know where is that command to mute all?
Prabhuji, you go in mute. More participants.
Go and mute in participants, is it? Okay, participants.
Here you can get option like mute all. If you are organizer.
Yes, I got it. Yes, now you all can unmute yourself if you want to talk. So he says, Govindam Adi Purusham Tam Aham Bhajami. This is a famous prayer of Brahma to the Lord. And in this, the meaning of this verse is, I worship, Brahma is saying, I worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Govinda, Krishna, who is the original person, absolute, infallible, without beginning. Although expanded into unlimited forms, he's still the same, original, the oldest, and the person always appearing as a fresh youth. Such eternal, blissful, all-knowing forms of the Lord are usually understood by the Vedic scholars and pure devotees. So you need to be a devotee or you need to be a Vedic scholar to understand the transcendental nature of the Lord, which he himself is now telling Arjuna. Let's move to the next verse. Ajo apisan avyayatma bhutanam ishwaro apisan prakrutim swam adhisthaya sambhavami atmamayaya. So now Krishna is giving more knowledge about himself. He's trying to describe the uniqueness of Krishna's appearance. What's the translation? Although I am unborn and my transcendental body never deteriorates, and although I am the Lord of all living entities, Bhutanam Ishwaro Apisan, I still appear in every millennium in my original transcendental form, Sambhavami Atmamayaya. What's the learning in this? Incarnation of the Lord, or what we call as avatar, is a great mystery. Most of us don't understand how does this happen. So now Krishna is trying to give some explanation about this. He says, I am without birth, Avyatma, but I still appear. I descend in the form of devas, devatas, humans, animals, and other forms. I have an indestructible body. Avyaya Atma. Avyaya Atma. I will take birth in all sorts of wombs like the Jiva who is under the influence of Papa and Punya. So he's saying, I am born like a normal person, but I am not under the influence of Papa and Punya because I am the Lord of all the living entities, Bhutanam Ishwaro Apisan, and I am not under the control of karma. I make my appearance situated in my own form, Prakrutim Swam Adhisthaya. I appear situated in my own Swarupa. Being situated spiritually, I act without duality of the soul and body. I appear by my own energy of Gnana, Bala, and Virya, which strongly manifest as Atma Mayaya. So, what is Krishna saying here? He says, I appear by my own Maya, by my own internal potency. What is that potency? That is called Yogamaya. So Yogamaya arranges the situation for Krishna's avatara. It describes and details the entire Leela that Krishna is going to perform when he is in this earth. He will be born to parents. He will behave like a normal human being, a child, an adult. But factually, this is not so. He appears to be born from a mother and father, but actually that is not the case. That is what is the understanding that we get from this verse. So how do we understand Atma Mayaya? Krishna has told us in second chapter, he says, you're not the body, you're the soul, you're the Atma. Now, what does Krishna describe Atma to be? Atma is eternal. You cannot cut, you cannot burn, you cannot wet. This is indestructible. So if we are Atma, he is Paramatma. So Atma is the part and parcel of Paramatma. So if we can understand and imagine how Atma is eternal, then we will be able to understand this transcendental knowledge of Lord, what Lord Krishna is telling Arjuna. He is Avyaya Atma. Let's look at the next verse. Very famous verse. I'm sure all of you should try and memorize this verse if you can. Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata abhyuthanam adharmasya tadatmanam sujamiham. This is now telling us the time of Krishna's appearance. He is described about how his body is. He has no birth, he has no death. He is Avyaya Atma. Now he's telling, when do I come onto this world as an avatar? And for what purpose? We will come to know in the next verses. Translation. Yada yada, whenever and wherever there is a decline in religious practice, O descendant of Bharata, another name for Arjuna, and a predominant rise of irreligion, at that time I descend myself. So Krishna says, yada yada, wherever and whenever, I appear when I cannot tolerate the destruction, that is glanir bhavati of dharma. I cannot tolerate the destruction of dharma, and when there is an increase in adharma, abhyuthanam. And to reverse the situation, I create my body, Atmanam, and I manifest as I am in this world. He has no birth, he has no death. The whole purpose of the mission of incarnation, Avatara, is to arouse Krishna consciousness everywhere so that we surrender to the Lord. So what is Krishna consciousness? It is the mood of service, the mood of surrender to the Lord. Sorry. After knowing the time of Krishna's appearance, the link to the next verse can be, now, why do you have to come, O my Lord? You have so many devotees who can rectify the destruction of dharma and stop the rise of adharma. Why is it necessary for Krishna to personally appear? Now, this is another interesting answer from Krishna. He says, I appear paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkrutam dharma samstapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. What is the purpose of my appearance? Now, If you read about Krishna's leelas, activities, the pavadas, the miracles that he did, you can understand that it is not easy for a normal person to do it. He could kill Kamsa when he was 12 years old. He could kill Putna, who came to give him milk, and kill him when he was 3 days old. And Putna was one of the most feared demons. So Krishna performs all these things. For what reason? Let's look at the translation. He says, I do this to deliver the pious, paritranaya sadhunam, and to annihilate the miscreants, as well as to re-establish the principles of religion. I advent myself millennium after millennium. I appear, why? Paritranaya. Tranaya means I deliver my devotees. Sadhunam. Everyone who is devoted to me, I come to deliver them. Vinashaya. I will come for the destruction of dushkrutam, evildoer, sinful, impious. Anyone who wants to support adharma will have to be destroyed by Krishna. Dharma samstapanarthaya. I come here to establish dharma. And for that purpose, sambhavami yuge yuge. I manifest myself in every age. That's the essence of this verse. Now, if you understand how do you understand the meaning in this is, he has two purposes. One is the primary purpose, that is to please, support, rescue, liberate his devotees. And killing the demons is the secondary part of his reason for appearance. How do we understand this? You take this example. Prahlad was born to Hiranyakashipu. And Hiranyakashipu was a demon. And Prahlad was the best devotee of the Lord. And Hiranyakashipu left no effort unturned to destroy his own son because he represented the Lord. But did he succeed? He did not succeed, because Krishna was there at every beck and call of his devotee, and he saved him. And when Prahlad says, oh Lord, when his father asks, where is your Lord? Show me. He says he is in this pillar. And he appeared as Narsimha from the pillar and killed Kamsa, Hiranyakashipu. So what does this mean? To rescue Prahlad is the primary objective, and to kill Hiranyakashipu is the secondary objective. That's how that is the reason for why he comes into this world as avatar after avatar. Let's look at the next verse. Another phenomenal verse. Janma karma chame divyam evam yo veti tatvataha tyaktva deham punarjanma naiti mam eti so Arjuna. He is now telling, upon leaving my body, I do not take birth again. Another element of transcendental knowledge. He says, you can return back to Godhead. We all know about dharma, artha, kama, moksha, but we don't know how to get moksha. So now Lord is telling us, just by knowing me, you can come back to me. Now, we should understand this word divyam. What does divyam mean? See, when anything is on this world, in this earth, we call it terrestrial. When anything is in the space, we call it celestial. And when anything is spiritual, we say it is beyond three modes of material nature. So Krishna is referring to the spiritual. He is beyond the three modes. In Brahma Samhita, Brahma describes the incarnation of the Lord. He says, Advaitam, Achyutam, Anadim, Anantarupam. Although there are many forms of the Lord, they are still one and the same Supreme Personality of Godhead. In Bodhini Upanishad, Purusha Bodhini Upanishad, there is a verse which says, Eko Devo Nitya Leelanurakto Bhaktavyapi Hrudi Antaratma. This one who is inconceivable, Deva, engaged in eternal pastimes, is spread in the devotees and resides in the devotee's heart. This is Vedic knowledge, and now Krishna is confirming this in this verse. He who knows my birth and activities are truly eternal. Yo veti tattvataha. The words tyaktva deham indicate the last condition, that is just before we leave this world. It's not only for giving up the body, one does not take birth again, but even before giving up the body, also you can attain me because you have understood my transcendental knowledge. So just by reading Gita, understanding these verses, getting to know what is the transcendental qualities of Krishna, we can gain moksha. It is as simple as that. But how many of us really take time to do this is the question. Let's go to the next verse. 4.10. Vitaraga bhaya krodha manmaya mam upashritaha bahavo gnana tapasa putamad bhavam agataha. Knowers of Krishna love Krishna. Being freed from the attachment, fear, and anger, being fully absorbed in me and taking refuge in me, many persons in the past became purified by knowledge of me, and thus they all attained transcendental love for me. So Krishna is again saying, by knowing me, you can come to me. So in the previous verse, he says, you know me, you can attain liberation. Now he highlights there are three difficulties. Vitaraga bhaya krodha. Once these obstacles are removed, then we can go to him. And Vitaraga bhaya krodha is also repeated in the second chapter. There he says, Dukkeshu anuvigna manaha. Chetana, you have recited this verse. Sukkeshu vikata spruha vitaraga bhaya krodha sthitadher muni ruchyate. So Vitaraga bhaya krodha comes repeatedly in Gita. So the message constantly is, if you are able to come out of this attachment, come out of this hatred, jealousy, you can attain me. Mam upashritaha. First time Krishna is using this word, mam upashritaha. What are the three stages of material consciousness? That's what Prabhupada explains. Attachment to material life, that's the first one. Fear of spiritual personal identity, second one. And conception of void that arises from frustration in life. Ramanujacharya quotes the following Shruti. He says, Tasya dhira parijananti yonim. Dhira means the foremost among the wise. So the wise men know about the Lord's method of birth. If you know that, you are considered as dhiras. Such wise persons have given up the attachment or affection for a person who even speak nonsense, vitaraga, about the Lord. My devotees have no fear of them, nor anger towards them. Why? Because they are preoccupied with meditating, thinking, hearing, singing about me, birth, my birth and activities. Mad bhavam agataha. Gnana tapasa. Hearing of Krishna may be tapasya in the beginning. It sounds difficult. It sounds not easy to digest, but later on it will become enjoying. They, having attained realization of the nature, eternal nature of Krishna's birth, become purified by austerity. So all of us can aspire to the same liberation by reading this transcendental knowledge chapter of Gita. We now have completed the first section. We go to the next section. The next 5 verses, he talks about Krishna, the creator and culminator of all the paths. Now, Krishna's dedicated devotees consider his birth, activities to be divine and eternal. But there are many who approach him with different goals. And they say, well, is Krishna the supreme? Now, these verses will tell them the answer in no uncertain terms. 4.11. Ye yatamam prapadyante tam sataiva bhajamiham mama vartamanu vartante manushya partha sarvasaha. One of the most important verse. Krishna says, I reciprocate with the worshipper's mood. Translation. As all surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. Everyone follows my path in all respects, O son of Prutha. Here, there is a nice, a simple way of understanding. It is said we can attain Krishna, we can attain bhakti to Krishna by following these 4 sentences. From our place, wherever we are, at our pace, whatever pace we want to adopt, by the grace of devotees, Krishna offers his embrace. So how do you understand this? From our place, at our pace, by devotees' grace, Krishna offers his embrace. So this is the principle of how we should approach Krishna. Ye yatamam prapadyante. As you surrender unto me, I will reward you. tam tathaiva bhajami aham. I also reciprocate in the same way. Mama vartamanu vartante. Everyone follows my path directly or indirectly in all respects. Manushya Partha Sarvasa, O son of Pritha, another word for Partha, Arjuna. Not only devotees surrender unto me, Krishna says, rather everyone, Sarvasaha. He could be a Gnani, he could be a Karmi, he could be a yogi, he could be a worshipper, whatever. Everyone has to follow my path because I am the essence of all these paths. Different paths lead to different goals, different approaches, and accordingly, Krishna reciprocates. If you are a Gnani, you want knowledge, Krishna will bless you with that. If you are a yogi, you desire mystic power, Krishna will bless you with that. If you are a bhakta, you want his devotion, he will grant you that. So, and through each phase of approach, you understand a part of Krishna. Through Grana, you understand the Brahma Jyoti, effulgence of Krishna, the Brahman understanding of Krishna. If you are an Ashtanga yogi, you understand the Paramatma realization. He is within all of us. Again, that's a partial realization. And if you follow devotion, bhakti, then you can understand the complete understanding of Krishna. Now, when I say this, it looks simple, but yet not easy to understand. What do you mean by partial understanding of Krishna? Why a Gnani or a Ashtanga yogi does not gain the complete understanding of Krishna? I think this example will help you understand. Let's take a cup of milk. And the milk is in front of me. Now what I will do, we will apply all the 5 senses one by one to the cup of milk. First is, let me touch. When you touch the milk, what do you understand? You can come to know that it is hot or cold. That is the partial understanding of milk that I can get. Let's say we use our ears. We want to hear about milk. Now, what do we hear? We can hear it is cow's milk, it is buffalo's milk, it is A2 milk, it is packet milk, it is powder milk, etc., etc. Some more description of milk. Now, let's apply sight, eyes. I see the milk. What do I see? I see it's white in color, and I see it's kept in a nice container. It looks appealing to me. Let's look at the next 4th sense, smell. If you take your nose, you can get the aroma of the milk. Now, each of the senses has given you some understanding of the milk, but is it the full understanding of the milk? I don't think so. If you want to get the full understanding of the milk, take the glass of milk and drink it. Then you will understand what is milk. Similarly, Bhakti Yoga will help you understand Krishna as Bhagavan. That is the essence of this verse. Let's move to the next. If by worshipping Krishna, path of bhakti, one is awarded with whatever you want, whatever he wants, why do people worship others with material desires? A very, very important question for all of us who have, we see 33 crore devatas being worshipped in this world. Now, Krishna is asking why? And he's also telling the question, answer to this question. He says, Kankshanta karmanam siddhim yajanta iha devata shipram hi manushe loke siddhir bhavati karmaja. People worship demigods because they desire quick results. The answer is in front of us. Men in this world desire success in fruitive activities, and therefore they worship the demigods. Quickly, of course, men get results from fruitive work in this world. What is Krishna trying to tell Arjuna here is, if he is the one who rewards the people, whichever way you pray to him, then why not worship him directly? The question and the answer is there in this verse. Kankshanta, longing for, praying for, desiring for. Men are full of desires. And what is the desire? They don't want to follow the path of bhakti because it's not fashionable. For them, they want instant gratification. So instead of following bhakti, which is simple, straightforward, direct, we follow the path of karma. We do karma kanda. We do Satyanarayana puja, we do Durga puja, we do Ganesh puja, we do so many worships because they Each of these devatas can give us one benediction or a quick result. And what is the quick result we are looking at? Karmanam Siddhi, we want to go to Swarga. We want to attain heaven. So, sorry. Iha Devata. Who is Iha Devata? A demigod. He could be Ganesha, Durga, Vaishnu Devi, Subramanya, you name him. And people worship these demigods. Why? They will give you immediate results for living in this world. They are called material benefits. What do you need? You need from Ganesha good education. What do you need from Lakshmi? You need wealth. You need a beautiful wife. You need a powerful son. You want to be the next chief minister of the state, etc., etc. All of these are desires for living in this material world. Demigods are very happy. You worship them. And if you do a sincere job, they will give you that benediction. But what we should realize after reading Gita is all the boons and benedictions that are coming from demigods are again flowing through the mercy of Krishna. If Krishna wills, the demigod can bless you. If Krishna doesn't will, the demigod cannot bless you. How do we understand this? Demigod worship is like a contract. It has to be obeyed. You do this to me, I will give you this benefit. How do we understand this even more clearly? Let's take an example. A child says, I want to smoke a cigarette. Is it dharma? It is not dharma. It is adharma. Now, the child says, I have the money. I'll go to a shopkeeper. I'll pay the money. Will the shopkeeper give him the cigarette? Of course, yes. This is what happens when we pray to a demigod. You have prayed to me sincerely. I will fulfill your desire, irrespective of whether it is dharma or adharma, because that is not part of the responsibility of the Lord to decide. The demigod doesn't take that call. It is for your consciousness to make the call. Now let's take what's the role of Krishna. The same child goes to his father, goes to his parents and says, Papa, I want to smoke. Give me money. Do you think Papa will give him? No. He says, I will not allow you to smoke. That's the difference between a demigod worship and Krishna worship. Of course, this is a very in-depth science. I'm only giving you the essence of this verse. So in short, if we have to gain bhakti, if you want to gain mukti, then you should worship Krishna. That's the message coming forward. The paths of bhakti and gnana give liberation, but the path of karma leads to bondage. This is the question in Arjuna's mind. Does it mean that there is some inequality in Krishna, the creator of all paths? I don't think so. Let's look at this verse. Krishna has created 4 varnas for people who have particular desires for enjoyment. So Krishna has designed everything in a very, very well thought out manner. He says, Chaturvarnyam maya shrishtam guna karma vibhagasa tasya kartaram api mam vidhi akartaram avyayam. What does he say? Krishna created 4 varnas based on qualities and work. Let's look at the translation. According to the 3 modes of material nature and the work associated with them, the 4 divisions of human society are created by me. And although I am the creator of the system, you should know that I am yet the non-doer, being unchangeable. And who are the 4 divisions? Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. So what is Krishna saying here? He says, Varnashrama provides a social structure for spiritual advancement. A very, very important learning for all of us. Nowhere does Krishna say that your Varna comes by birth. You cannot be a Brahmana just because you are born in a Brahmin family. You must follow the path of Brahmana to be recognized as a Brahmana. But most of the time, this is misunderstood. I am born as a Brahmana son, so I become a Brahmana. It is not so. If I am the son of a judge, can I become a judge? That is what we should try to understand. Varna provides for one's material needs in the most uncomplicated, simple, harmonious way according to one's psychophysical nature. That is Varna. Ashrama provides a time-wise progression in one's spiritual commitment. Just follow these 4 Varnas and Ashrama, you can go back to Krishna. What is Guna Karma Vibhagasa? Guna refers to quality, that is the character. And karma refers to activity, and that is the competence. So character and competence. Guna, karma, vibhagasa are required for you to define your varna. It's like, we are all first year MBBS students. Yes, you have the character because you're all studying doctor. But if I ask you to perform an operation on a serious patient, do you have the competence? Do you have the karma to be able to deliver that operation? No. So that's how we should understand this. Vidhi akartaram. Krishna is the one who made the system, but he is not the doer, which means that he has not put people as Brahmana or Shudra. It is based on their karma. So Krishna is not partial, he is reciprocal. How do we understand this? Now, there is a court and the judge is giving judgment. What is the judgment based on? It is based on rules, and whether a person gets punishment or not is based on his own deeds and not on the judge. That is exactly the role of Krishna. He says, you follow the path of Varna and Ashrama, you will come to me. You don't follow the path, then whatever comes your way, you are responsible for that. Let's go to the now next link to the next verse. Krishna has appeared in a Kshatriya family, and he performs activities obligatory to being a Kshatriya. Now, how to understand his activities? Another interesting dimension Krishna reveals now. Krishna now explains how he is the non-doer and result of understanding this. Namam karmani limpanti, name karma phale spruha, iti mam yo abhijanati, karma bhir nasa bhadyate. What is the one-line summary? Krishna's work doesn't affect him. There is no work that affects me, nor do I aspire for the fruits of action. One who understands this truth about me also does not become entangled in the fruitive reactions of work. So now the question is, if Krishna is not motivated by any desire, then why does he work? Good question. And the answer is there here. Name karma phale spruha. The answer, he says, I act out of love. All of us should try to do this. Now, then the question is love not karma phala spruha? The answer is no. If you want something material as a result of your karma, then that is karma phale spruha. If it is not material, iti mam yo abhijanati karma bir nasa badhyate. When understands this, he will not be bound. So what is the simple understanding? Do not do any karma for the want of fruits. Do it out of love. Now, knowledge of Krishna is extraordinary. It's not so easy to understand Krishna. If it were, then I think the whole world would have been reading Gita and would be following the path of Gita. Why do we say this? Why do you think it is difficult? A small example will try and bring this point alive. To know about Krishna and to know Krishna are two different things. Why? Take an example of a child. A child is not well, and the mother takes him to a doctor. And the doctor treats the child for a particular illness. He gives medicine and the child recovers. Now, does the doctor know the child, or does the doctor know about the child? The answer is the doctor knows about the child. Why? He saw the symptom of illness and he gave him medicine for that, and the child is cured. But does the doctor have a personal relationship with the child? No. Let's look at the mother or parents. The child and the mother knows the child because she has a personal relationship with the child. That is how we should try to understand the Lord. We should have that understanding that he is our Father and he is there to protect us, and we are offering all that he has given to us in his service. And that's the least that we could do to attain Krishna. Next verse. Evam gnatva krutam karma purvairapi mumukshubhihi kuru karmaiva tasmatvam purvai purvataram krutam. Many souls in the past have attained perfection by just knowing this about Krishna. All the liberated souls in ancient times acted with this understanding of my transcendental nature. Therefore, you should perform your duty following in their footsteps. So what is Krishna saying? It says, Evam Gnatma Krutam Karma. Many souls in the past have attained perfection by understanding this about me. We have just read in the first verse that this Gita comes from time immemorial. This is an imperishable, eternal knowledge. All of the people, all of the Rajas and Rishis and Raja Rishis who have understood about Krishna have attained perfection. So he's calling upon Arjuna to also understand about Krishna. So the essence is Krishna consciousness, surrendering to the Lord, is not a new process, nor it is an old process. It is an eternal process. So we should be first and foremost aware of this. If you know how to act, you can be free from bondage. If you know about Krishna, you will be free from bondage. So if you do an action, then you will get bound. But if you do an action out of love, if you do an action out of selflessness, then you will be free from bondage. Yeah, it's now, how do you understand this? Let's say in Srimad Bhagavatam, there is an example. It says a person drinks too much of milk. What happens? He will have digestive disorder. Now, the same person can also be cured by taking the same milk in the form of curds. That is knowledge. So the same milk, which is transformed into curd, can cure the disease. So we should do our prescribed duty. We should do our karma, just renounce the fruits of karma to the Lord. Do every karma as an act of love to the God. This is the essence of this the verse. So karma yoga culminates into bhakti yoga if you offer all the results unto the Lord. Let's move into the next verse. We are now moving into the third section. Karma yoga is dharma, understanding karma on the platform of prana. A very, very interesting session or section of transcendental knowledge. One has to work according to the examples of previous bona fide devotees. Krishna is saying this. Why one's action should not be independent. Kim karma kim akarmeti kavayo api atra mohita tatte karma pravakshyami yagnanatva mokshase asubhat. What is Krishna saying? Intricacies of karma are difficult to grasp. Even the intelligent are bewildered, which is true in determining what is action and what is inaction. Now I shall explain to you what action is, knowing which you shall be liberated from all misfortune. All of us talk about karma, but do we really have an understanding of karma? Now Krishna is trying to explain this to Arjuna. Kim karma, kim akarmeti. Kim karma is what is action. Kim akarmeti is what is inaction. Kavayo api atra mohita. Most of the intelligent people are confounded on this subject. Mohita. Therefore, he's saying, Pravakshyami. I will tell you, I will explain to you what is action and what is inaction. And by knowing this, you will become free from bondage. You will be liberated. Now, how do we understand this? It's not something which is very difficult to deliver in this world. Great kings like Manu, Janaka, they performed actions according to Vedic scriptures. They were the greatest kings of their times, but they ruled the kingdom on behalf of the Lord. They never took anything as personal accomplishment, nor there was any pride in them that I am the greatest emperor of my time. That is what is the essence of understanding the karma theory. Do everything as a result or as an offering to the Lord. Let's look at the next one, even more interesting verse. Karmano hi api bodhavyam, bodhavyam cha vikarmanaha, akarmanas cha bodhavyam, gahana karmano gatihi. The intricacies of action are very hard to understand. Gahana karmano gatihi. Therefore, one should know properly what action is, what forbidden action is, and what inaction is. So this, now Krishna is explaining to Arjuna, bodhavyam cha vikarmana. What is vikarmana? What is karma? Bodhavyam cha vikarmana. What is vikarma? Akarmanas cha bodhavyam. What is akarmana? Akarma. Gana karmanogati. He himself says the intricacies of action are very hard to understand. And now Krishna is describing each one of them. Let's understand that. What is karma? The action that follows dharma. That is karma. Vikarma, actions which are against dharma. They are forbidden actions. They bring you bad reactions. Drinking, smoking, illicit gambling, they are all vikarmas. All the religions prescribe this loudly. But has man stopped doing them? No. That is the beauty of karma. Understanding the definition is not sufficient. Practicing it is the essence. Akarma is not inaction. Just because I don't do any action, it's not that I will not get any karma. We should perform our action, which brings no reaction. That is the essence of akarma. Let's look at the next verse. Karmani akarmaya pashyed akarmani cha karmaya sa buddhiman manusyeshu sa yukta krishna karmakrut. The intricacies of karma are difficult to understand. He elaborates on this. One who sees inaction in action and action in inaction is intelligent among men. It is so very, what you can say, you must read this again and again to understand what's the essence. So Krishna in this verse says, karma can have four meanings: action, reaction, system of action and reaction, one type of action, and that is pious action. So karma can mean any of these four. Akarma can have two meanings. One is very simple, inaction. I will not do any action. Second, action that produces no reaction. The first one is easy to define. The second one is easy to say, but difficult to understand. When we produce action on our behalf, that produces action. But when we do action on Krishna's behalf, that produces no reaction. That is the essence of inaction in action, akarma. Now, example. If the soldier is fighting at the border, he is defending a country, is that karma or akarma? The answer is, it is karma, but no reaction, because it is doing for a noble cause, for upholding dharma. So when the battle of Kurukshetra happened between Pandavas and Kauravas, Pandavas were adopting the path of akarma, because they were not the aggressor. It was the Kauravas who were the aggressors. Now the same soldier, if he fights in a city, just because he's a
Shyam, voice is missing. I don't know
whether you're not audible.
Sham, voice is not there. Only. Can you hear me? Sham, can you hear me?
Yeah, he is not audible. We have just texted.
No.